Let me ask you a question. Why does the same sunrise look like promise to one person and like just another exhausting day to another? Think about it. The light is identical. The city hasn't moved. Yet two people standing at the same window, at the same moment looking at the same sky, they see two entirely different worlds. Most people assume that what they see is simply what's there. That if the day feels heavy, it's because the day is heavy. It seems like common sense. It happens to be exactly backwards. There's something operating between you and your circumstances, something most people never examine, and something that, once you understand it, changes everything about how you experience your life. Let me show you what I mean. I'd like to tell you about something that hides in plain sight, something so obvious that most people miss it entirely, and so powerful that those who discover it can scarcely believe they lived so long without seeing it. Stand with me at dawn in Chicago. Watch the light break over Lake Michigan and spill across the skyline. The buildings emerge from darkness one by one. The water catches fire with reflected gold. It's the same sunrise that has greeted this city for 100 years. Now here's a question that seems simple but contains a life-changing truth. Why does that same sunrise look like promise to one person and like just another exhausting day to another? Think about it. The light is identical. The lake is the same lake. The buildings haven't moved an inch. Yet two people standing at the same window, at the same moment, looking at the same city, they see two entirely different worlds. One sees the beginning of a day filled with possibility. The other sees the start of another slog through problems and frustrations. One feels energy rising with the sun. The other feels weight settling on their shoulders before the day has even begun. Now, why do you suppose that is? Most people never stop to ask this question. They assume that what they see is simply what's there. They believe their experience of the world is the world itself. That if the day feels heavy, it's because the day is heavy. That if circumstances feel difficult, it's because circumstances are difficult. But watch what happens when you examine this assumption carefully. Two people in the same office, with the same job, facing the same challenges, one thrives while the other struggles. Two neighbors on the same street, with similar houses, similar incomes, similar families, one radiates contentment while the other simmers with dissatisfaction. The circumstances are remarkably similar. Something else is different. William James, perhaps the greatest psychologist America has produced, observed this paradox clearly. He noted that the same world looks radically different to the optimist and the pessimist, not because they live in different worlds, but because they experience the same world through different lenses. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years ago. They made a careful distinction between events and our interpretation of events. The event, they said, is neutral. What we make of it is everything. Here's what this means for you. What you call reality passes through a filter before you experience it. And that filter determines what you receive more than the circumstances themselves. This isn't philosophy. This is observable fact. Pay attention this week. Notice how the same meeting produces entirely different reactions in different people. Watch for the moment when you and a colleague experience the same situation and describe it completely differently afterward. Observe the people who seem to find opportunity everywhere and those who find obstacles everywhere. The circumstances around them are remarkably similar. The results they produce are vastly different. Something invisible is creating the difference. Once you see this, really see it, you can never unsee it. The comfortable assumption that I feel bad because things are bad begins to crack. The belief that your experience is determined by what happens to you starts to crumble. Something is mediating between events and experience. Something is shaping what you perceive before you perceive it. Something is filtering what arrives before you receive it. What is that something? And once you understand it, can you change it? That's exactly what we're going to explore. But first, we need to look at the trap that keeps most people from ever discovering the answer. The trap that keeps them waiting for circumstances to change while their circumstances stubbornly refuse to cooperate. Here's the mistake that keeps millions of intelligent, capable people trapped in lives far smaller than they were meant to live. They believe attitude is a result. They think attitude is what happens after everything else happens. First the circumstances arrive, then the attitude follows. First you get the promotion, then you feel confident. First the relationship improves, then you feel loving. First the money appears, then you feel abundant. The circumstances are the cause. The attitude is the effect. This seems so reasonable. After all, why would you feel confident before you have something to be confident about? Why would you feel abundant before the money arrives? Why would you feel optimistic before the situation improves? It appears to be simple logic. It happens to be exactly, precisely backwards. But watch what happens when people live by this logic. They wait. They wait for circumstances to change so their attitude can change. They wait for the boss to recognize them so they can feel valued. They wait for their spouse to be kind so they can be loving in return. They wait for the economy to improve so they can feel hopeful. They wait and wait and wait. And while they're waiting, something curious happens. The circumstances they're waiting for never quite arrive. Or if they do arrive, they don't produce the attitude change that was expected. The promotion comes, and within 6 months the confidence has faded, and they're waiting for the next promotion. The relationship improves for a while, then settles back into the old patterns. The money appears and somehow disappears just as quickly. It's like the man standing in front of a cold stove saying to it, "Give me heat, and then I'll add the wood." He stands there, arms folded, waiting. The stove remains cold. He grows frustrated. "What's wrong with this stove?" he asks. "Why won't it give me heat?" But stoves don't work that way. Cause must precede effect. The wood must go in before the heat can come out. No amount of waiting will change this fundamental law. It's that simple. And yet this is exactly how most people approach their lives. They wait for the warmth of success before investing the fuel of effort. They wait for the heat of favorable circumstances before adding the wood of favorable attitude. Now let's take 100 people who believe attitude follows circumstance, who wait for conditions to improve before their outlook improves. Follow them for 20 years. What do you find? You find that their conditions have, on average, remained remarkably stable. Some have improved slightly, some have declined slightly, but the essential character of their lives, the quality of their work, their relationships, their financial situation has stayed within a narrow range. The circumstances they were waiting for never materialized in any lasting way. And here's what's most striking. If you ask them why, they'll point to their circumstances. I would have succeeded, but the economy. I would have been happier, but my spouse. I would have advanced further, but my company. The circumstances are always the explanation. The circumstances are always to blame. Meanwhile, a small percentage of people, the same small percentage who succeed in every generation, seem to be living by different rules entirely. Their circumstances improve. Their relationships flourish. Their work prospers. And if you ask them the secret, they say something that sounds almost too simple to be true. They say, "I decided to be different before anything around me changed." Most people dismiss this as positive thinking nonsense. If it were that simple, everyone would do it. There must be something else. Luck, connections, privilege, timing. Something external must explain the difference. But there isn't something else. There is only this. They discovered that attitude is not a result. Attitude is a cause. And that single reversal, that one flip in understanding, changes everything. The Bible states it with characteristic directness. As ye sow, so shall ye reap. Not as ye wait, so shall ye receive. Not as ye hope, so shall ye harvest. As ye sow, cause first, then effect. Planting first, then harvest. Emerson wrote that the world belongs to the energetic, to those who act before conditions are perfect, who move before the path is clear, who plant before the harvest is guaranteed. Every wisdom tradition emphasizes this sequence. Cause must precede effect, input before output, wood before heat, attitude before circumstance. The reason most people fail to grasp this isn't because it's complicated. It's because it places responsibility exactly where we don't want it to be, on us. If our attitude creates our circumstances, then we can't blame our circumstances for our attitude. If changing our inner world changes our outer world, then we can't wait for the outer world to change first. That's the problem. And until it's solved, nothing else can fundamentally change. So here's the question that demands an answer. If attitude is the cause rather than the effect, if it's the wood we must add before we can expect heat, Then what exactly is attitude? Not the word, but the thing itself. What is it that successful people project before conditions change? The answer is a single word. And understanding that word changes everything. Here's the key, and I want you to consider this carefully. Attitude is not how you react to what happens. Attitude is what you project before anything happens. Now let me say that again, because this distinction is crucial. Attitude is not how you react to what happens. Attitude is what you project before anything happens. It is not a response. It is a broadcast. It is not what comes back to you. It is what goes out from you. Think of a radio tower. The radio tower doesn't wait to see what signals it receives and then decide what to broadcast. The tower broadcasts continuously, sending its signal out into the world. The world receives that signal and responds to it. If the tower broadcasts static, static comes back. If the tower broadcasts a clear, strong signal, that's what returns. Your attitude works exactly the same way. Every morning when you wake up, before you've checked your email, before you've spoken to anyone, before the first event of the day has occurred, you are broadcasting, you are sending a signal out into every room you enter, every conversation you have, every task you undertake. And here's what most people never realize. The world receives your broadcast and responds to it. Your environment is a mirror. It can only reflect back to you what you first project into it. Now think about what this means. The person who wakes up expecting difficulty finds difficulty at every turn. The person who wakes up expecting opportunity seems to stumble upon it constantly. And here's what makes this so remarkable. They're both right. They're both living in a world that confirms exactly what they expected to find. The mirror is faithful. It returns whatever is projected into it. Throughout history, the great wise men and teachers, philosophers and prophets have disagreed with one another on many different things. It is only on this one point that they are in complete and unanimous agreement. William James, the great Harvard psychologist, put it this way: the greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. Not by altering their circumstances, not by waiting for conditions to improve, by altering their attitudes. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, wrote nearly 2,000 years ago, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Notice, he doesn't say the soul becomes dyed with the color of its circumstances. The thoughts come first. The color of life follows. The Bible states it with characteristic directness. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Not so does he become after his circumstances change. So is he right now, already. Emerson, the great American essayist, declared, "A man is what he thinks about all day long." Now let me say that again. They all agree. James, Aurelius, the Bible, Emerson, across centuries, across cultures, across philosophies that disagree on nearly everything else, on this one point, complete agreement. What you project determines what returns. Now think of a farmer's land. The land doesn't care what you plant. It will return corn if you plant corn. It will return nightshade if you plant nightshade. It will return the most nourishing food or the most deadly poison with equal faithfulness. The land isn't good or bad. It's neutral. It's a mirror. Your environment, the people around you, the opportunities that appear, the obstacles you encounter, works exactly like that land. It doesn't care what you project. It will faithfully return whatever you give it. Project suspicion, and people will give you reasons to be suspicious. Project trust, and people will rise to meet it. Project expectation of difficulty, and difficulty will arrange itself before you. Project expectation of solutions, and solutions will appear. This isn't positive thinking. This is cause and effect. This is law. Here's the practical implication, and it's so important I want to state it as clearly as I can. If you want to change what comes back to you, you must first change what goes out from you. You cannot get heat from the stove before you put in the wood. You cannot harvest corn before you plant the seed. You cannot receive a different signal before you broadcast a different signal. This is why affirmations and positive thinking often fail. People try to think positively while broadcasting negativity. They say, "I am successful," while every cell in their body broadcasts, "I am failing." The world doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to what you broadcast. It responds to your actual attitude, the signal going out from you every moment of every day. Attitude is the magic word. But the magic only works when you understand that attitude is the cause, not the effect. It is what you project, not what you receive. It is the seed, not the harvest. Change your broadcast, and you change your world. It's that simple, and it's that difficult, because changing what you project requires changing what you are. So how do you change a broadcast that's been running for years? How do you become aware of a signal you've been transmitting unconsciously? How do you actually do this? That's what we need to explore next. Now that we understand what attitude is, a broadcast rather than a response, a cause rather than an effect, the question becomes practical. How do we change a broadcast that's been running for years? How do we become conscious of a signal we've been transmitting unconsciously? Let me walk you through the 5 turning points that transform this understanding from an interesting idea into a living reality. The first turning point is recognition. Before you can change your attitude, you must become aware that you have one, that you are, right now, in this moment, broadcasting a signal. Most people are entirely unconscious of their broadcast. They walk through life transmitting fear, irritation, resignation, skepticism, and they have no idea they're doing it. They're like a radio tower that's been hijacked by static, and they think the static is just how life sounds. The signal has become invisible to them precisely because it's constant. A fish doesn't know it's in water. A person who has always broadcast anxiety doesn't recognize anxiety as a broadcast. They think it's just reality. So the first task is simply to notice. For one day, pay attention to what you're projecting. Not what you're saying, not what you think you feel. What are you actually broadcasting? When you walk into a room, what signal enters with you? When you speak to your spouse, your colleague, your child, what are they receiving from you beneath the words? This is uncomfortable work. Most people discover that their broadcast is quite different from what they imagined. They thought they were projecting confidence, and they discover they've been projecting anxiety. They thought they were projecting warmth, and they discover they've been projecting judgment. The recognition is humbling, but it is the doorway to everything else. The second turning point is responsibility. Once you see that you are broadcasting continuously, you must accept that the broadcast is yours. No one else is operating your transmitter. Your spouse isn't in charge of your signal. Your boss isn't in charge of your signal. The economy, the government, the traffic, the weather, none of these are in charge of your signal. You are. Now this is where most people stumble, because responsibility feels like blame, and blame feels like burden. But responsibility is actually the greatest liberation. Think about it. If someone else were in charge of your broadcast, you'd be helpless. You'd have to wait for them to change before anything could change. But since you are in charge, you can change your broadcast right now, this instant, regardless of what anyone else does. The opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice, it's conformity. The 95% who fail because they conform. They wait to see what signal everyone else is broadcasting, and they match it. They wait to see what attitude their circumstances seem to warrant, and they adopt it. They surrender the control of their own transmitter to external forces. Taking responsibility means reclaiming that control. The third turning point is selection. Once you accept responsibility for your broadcast, you must choose what to broadcast. This is not about manufacturing artificial emotions. You cannot successfully pretend to feel what you don't feel. The world detects pretense instantly and responds to your actual signal, not your pretended one. Selection means something different. It means deciding in advance what kind of person you will be before you encounter the day's circumstances. It means setting your signal consciously, based on who you want to become, rather than letting your signal be set reactively by whatever happens. Think of it this way. You can decide before you walk into the meeting that you will be the person who looks for solutions rather than problems. You can decide before you get home that you will be the person who appreciates rather than criticizes. You can decide before the difficulty arrives that you will be the person who asks, "How can I use this?" rather than, "Why did this happen to me?" This is not denying reality. This is selecting which aspect of reality to amplify in your broadcast. The fourth turning point is persistence. Changing a broadcast that has been running for years, sometimes for decades, is not accomplished in a moment of inspiration. The old signal will reassert itself. Old patterns will return. You will forget for hours or days at a time that you have any control at all. This is normal. The question is not whether you will slip back into old patterns. You will. The question is how quickly you will notice and how consistently you will return to the new broadcast. Every time you notice the old signal and consciously choose the new one, you strengthen the new pattern. Every time you catch yourself projecting the old fear, the old irritation, the old resignation, and you deliberately shift to the new signal, you are rewiring yourself. William James estimated that it takes approximately 21 days of consistent practice to begin establishing a new habit of mind. Modern research suggests it may take longer, 60 days, 90 days. The specific number matters less than the commitment to persist. The fifth turning point is witness. At some point, and this is different for everyone, you will begin to see the reflection change. The environment, which faithfully mirrors what you project, will begin returning a different signal. People will respond to you differently. Opportunities will appear that weren't visible before. Problems that seemed intractable will resolve in unexpected ways. This is not magic. This is the natural result of projecting a different signal into a responsive environment. But when you witness it, when you see the proof that the mirror works, something shifts at a deep level. The understanding moves from intellectual to experiential. You know it now, not because someone told you, but because you've seen it operate. Recognition, responsibility, selection, persistence, witness. These are the 5 turning points. This is the map. But knowing the map is not the same as traveling the territory. How does this actually look in the texture of ordinary life? What happens when 2 people face the same circumstances with different broadcasts? Let me show you. Let me show you how this principle operates in the texture of ordinary life, how the same circumstances yield entirely different results based solely on the broadcast. Consider 2 people beginning their workday. Both have similar jobs, similar commutes, similar challenges awaiting them. Let's call them David and Sarah. David has not examined his broadcast. He wakes up already transmitting a signal of burden. The day is going to be hard, people are going to be difficult, there's too much to do, and not enough time. He's not consciously aware he's broadcasting this, but he is. It colors his breakfast conversation. His spouse says something about the weekend plans, and David responds with irritation. He's already carrying the weight of a day that hasn't happened yet. It shapes his posture in traffic. Other drivers seem aggressive, the lights seem longer, the commute seems designed to frustrate him. He arrives at the office already depleted, already defensive. The broadcast precedes him into every interaction. Now watch what happens. The morning meeting has a difficult moment. A colleague challenges one of David's proposals. David's broadcast, already tuned to burden and difficulty, receives this as attack. He responds defensively. The colleague responds to his defensiveness. The meeting becomes contentious. When it's over, David has proof. See how difficult people are? A project hits an unexpected obstacle. David's broadcast, already expecting problems, amplifies the obstacle. It looms larger than it is. He spends the afternoon fighting it, resenting it, complaining about it to anyone who will listen. By 5 o'clock, David is exhausted. The day delivered exactly what he broadcast he expected. The meeting was contentious. The colleague was difficult. The project hit obstacles. At day's end, he has proof. Look at how hard everything was. His belief is confirmed. His attitude was justified by events. Now consider Sarah. Sarah has examined her broadcast. She knows she has control of her transmitter, and she's chosen her signal deliberately. Before she encounters any circumstances, she's decided, today I broadcast capability. Today I look for what's working. Today I am the person who finds a way. This isn't denial. She knows the day will have challenges, but she's selected which aspect of reality to amplify. She wakes up and chooses her broadcast consciously. The word she carries is capable. When her spouse mentions weekend plans, she engages with interest. She's not carrying the weight of a day that hasn't happened. The commute is the same traffic, the same lights, but her broadcast transforms it into thinking time, preparation time. She arrives at the office with energy in reserve. not already depleted. Now watch what happens to the same events. The morning meeting has the same difficult moment. The same colleague challenges a proposal, but Sarah's broadcast, tuned to capability and solutions, receives this differently. She hears a concern that might improve the proposal. She responds with curiosity rather than defense. The colleague, receiving a different signal, softens. They find common ground. The meeting becomes productive. The same project hits the same obstacle. Sarah's broadcast doesn't amplify it. She sees it as problem to be solved, not disaster to be mourned. She spends the afternoon finding a path around it. By the time David is still complaining, Sarah has moved forward. By 5 o'clock, Sarah has energy remaining. The day delivered something entirely different. Now here's what's critical to understand. The circumstances were not different. The meeting wasn't easier for Sarah. The colleague wasn't nicer to her. The project obstacle wasn't smaller. The traffic wasn't lighter. The day didn't favor her. The difference was entirely in what she projected into those circumstances and therefore what she was able to perceive and receive from them. Both David and Sarah went to bed that night with their beliefs confirmed. Both were right about the world they experienced. And both will wake up tomorrow and do it all again. The day obliges whatever signal it receives. Think of it in terms of those 100 men we spoke of earlier. Of 100 people beginning a career at 25, why do only 5 achieve genuine financial independence? It's not intelligence. Many of the failures are brilliant. It's not education. Many have advanced degrees. It's not luck. Over 40 years, luck averages out. The difference is attitude. The 5 who succeed have learned, consciously or unconsciously, to project a signal that the environment responds to favorably. They expect opportunity, so they perceive opportunity. They expect solutions, so they find solutions. They expect people to be helpful, so they elicit helpfulness. The 95 who fail project a different signal. They expect obstacles, so obstacles dominate their perception. They expect resistance, so resistance is what they encounter. They expect things to be hard, so hard is what things are. Every study of high performers reveals this pattern. They do not wait to feel confident until circumstances warrant it. They project confidence into circumstances, and circumstances respond. The research on self-fulfilling prophecies confirms expectations shape outcomes through mechanisms both psychological and behavioral. What you expect, you tend to create. Here's a practical experiment you can run immediately. Tomorrow morning, before you encounter anyone, before you check your phone, before the first circumstance of the day arrives, consciously choose your broadcast, not what you hope to feel, what you decide to project. Pick one word that represents the attitude you will transmit: capable, curious, grateful, patient, engaged. Whatever word captures who you choose to be, then carry that word with you as a touchstone. When you notice yourself slipping into reactive broadcasting, responding to circumstances instead of projecting toward them, return to the word. Return to the deliberate signal. Do this for 1 week, just 1 week, and notice what the mirror returns to you. I am not asking you to believe anything on faith. I am asking you to test it. Run the experiment. Gather your own evidence. Then decide. Because once you see the day oblige your broadcast, once you witness the mirror returning what you project, everything changes. The understanding becomes not just intellectual, but lived. And that's when the real questions emerge. If the day obliges our broadcast, what about a whole life? What happens when this principle is truly mastered? What becomes possible when we stop waiting for circumstances and start creating them? That's what we need to explore now. Now here's something that most people never grasp, and it explains why so many who understand the principle still fail to live it. If attitude is the cause that creates all other effects, if it's the broadcast that determines what the mirror returns, then cultivating attitude is not one task among many. It is the central work of life. Let me tell you something which, if you really understand it, will alter your life immediately. Most people have their priorities exactly inverted. They chase effects. They pursue wealth, relationships, achievement, recognition. They work harder and harder at harvesting, and they wonder why the harvest never seems to arrive, or when it does, why it never satisfies. But all of these are effects. All of these are the harvest. And most people never attend to the planting. Think of a farmer who neglects his planting but obsesses over his harvest. Every day he wanders his fields, measuring stalks that haven't emerged, worrying about yields that are already determined by seeds already sown. Meanwhile, the soil lies unattended. The seeds go unexamined. He works harder and harder at the business of harvesting while doing nothing about the business of planting. This is how most people pursue success. They exhaust themselves chasing effects while neglecting the one cause that determines everything. They try to harvest corn from land they've sown with nightshade. They wonder why abundance never comes when they've been broadcasting scarcity. They chase confidence while projecting fear, seek connection while broadcasting distance, pursue opportunity while transmitting closed-mindedness. The farmer's land doesn't care about his intentions. It returns what is planted, nothing else. Here's what the successful understand that the unsuccessful don't. The cultivation of attitude is not something you add to an already full schedule. It is not a luxury for those who have extra time. It is not a self-improvement project to consider after the practical matters are handled. It is the foundation upon which everything else stands. The most successful people protect their morning mindset more carefully than they protect their morning meetings. They know what they broadcast at dawn shapes what returns by dusk. They understand that the first hours of consciousness are the planting that determines the day's harvest. Every biography of highly effective people reveals rituals of morning cultivation. The Stoics practiced morning meditation, examining their thoughts before the day's events could contaminate them. Benjamin Franklin asked himself each morning a single question: what good shall I do this day? The most successful executives protect their first hours from reactive demands, from emails and news and other people's emergencies. They understand what most people never grasp. The morning broadcast shapes the day's reflection. Now, why do I say this matters so much? Because small differences in daily broadcast compound over time. The person who broadcasts capability just slightly more consistently than average doesn't end up slightly ahead. They end up in an entirely different life trajectory. Think of it like compound interest. A small percentage difference maintained over years produces vastly different outcomes. The same is true of attitude. A small improvement in your broadcast, maintained day after day, year after year, doesn't produce a small improvement in results. It produces a transformed life. Most people invest 90% of their energy managing circumstances and 10% cultivating attitude. They spend their days reacting to what arrives, putting out fires, solving problems, responding to demands. At the end of each day, if there's any energy left, maybe they'll think about their mindset. The successful invert this ratio. They invest heavily in the broadcast, knowing that a better broadcast reduces the fires that need fighting, transforms the problems that need solving, changes the nature of the demands that arrive. They work on cause, and they find that the effects take care of themselves. Here's a practical application. Examine your morning routine. What are the first signals you broadcast? What thoughts do you allow in the first hour? What conversations, news, worries do you invite into your consciousness before the day has even begun? Notice where your attention goes in the first moments of waking. This is when your broadcast is set. This is the planting that determines the harvest. What are you planting? Most people plant reactively. They check their phone before their feet hit the floor. They absorb other people's agendas before they've established their own. They begin the day already behind, already responding, already on defense. Then they wonder why the day feels like a battle. The error is treating attitude cultivation as something to add, another item on the to-do list, another demand in an already demanding life. This inverts the priority entirely. Attitude cultivation is not an addition. It is the foundation upon which productive activity stands. Skip it to get more done, and you undermine the very capacity to do. The busy person who has no time for attitude cultivation is the farmer who has no time for planting. Let me be direct about this. If you find yourself saying, "I don't have time to work on my attitude," you have revealed exactly why your circumstances haven't changed. The question is not, how do I find time for this? The question is, how have I been organizing my life around effects while ignoring cause? The shift required is from managing effects to cultivating cause, from obsessing over the harvest to attending to the planting, from chasing what you want to projecting what you are. This is the central work. Everything else flows from it. But here's something even more important, something that transforms this from self-improvement into something much larger. Your broadcast doesn't just affect what returns to you. It affects everyone around you. And that changes everything. Now let's consider something that expands this understanding from the personal to the relational, something that transforms attitude cultivation from self-interest into service. Here's the truth that changes everything. You are part of other people's environment. Your broadcast doesn't just shape what returns to you. It becomes part of what others receive. When you walk into a room, before you speak a word, before you do anything, you have already affected that room. Your broadcast has entered with you. Everyone in that room now has a slightly different environment than they had before you arrived. This is true whether you intend it or not, whether you're aware of it or not. The question is not whether you affect others, you do. The question is, what effect you bring. Think about the people you know. Some people brighten the room by entering, some people brighten it by leaving. You've noticed this. You know exactly what I mean. Some people enter and the energy rises. Conversations become more productive. Problems seem more solvable. Hope becomes more accessible. These people are broadcasting something that serves everyone present. Other people enter and the energy drops. Conversations become more guarded. Problems loom larger. Anxiety spreads. These people are broadcasting something too, and everyone in the room receives it. Now here's the question that changes how you think about attitude work. Which one are you? Notice what happens to conversations when certain people join them. Do they become more productive or less? More hopeful or less? More creative or less? This is the broadcast, made visible through others' responses. The Bible teaches that we are to be lights in the world, not for our own benefit, but for others. Emerson wrote that every person is a cause, not just an effect. Modern research on emotional contagion confirms what wisdom traditions have always known. Moods spread through groups, with the most powerful broadcasters having the greatest influence. What you project becomes part of what others live. This means that mastering your broadcast is not selfish. It is one of the most valuable services you can provide. When you project capability, patience, appreciation, you become part of the favorable signal in everyone else's environment. You make it easier for them to succeed, to hope, to find solutions. When you project resentment, criticism, anxiety, you become part of the static they must overcome. You make their environment harder to navigate, their problems harder to solve, their hope harder to maintain. Now think about money for a moment. We've said that money cannot be sought directly. Money, like happiness, is an effect. It's a result of a cause, and the cause is valuable service. Our rewards will always be in exact proportion to our service. Now we see why this is true at a deeper level. Valuable service flows naturally from one whose broadcast creates value in every interaction. The person who enters meetings broadcasting capability makes the meeting more productive for everyone. The person who enters conversations broadcasting appreciation makes connection more possible for everyone. The person who enters problems broadcasting solution orientation makes resolution more likely for everyone. These people provide value before they do anything. Their broadcast is itself a contribution. And people want to work with them, want to hire them, want to partner with them, want to reward them. Not because of a transaction, I'll broadcast well so people will pay me, but because value naturally attracts reward, because service naturally generates return. The rewards come not from grasping, but from giving, not from demanding, but from projecting. Think about the ripple effect. One person broadcasting capability in a meeting changes the meeting for everyone. The person next to them receives that broadcast and finds their own capability more accessible. They contribute more effectively. The person next to them benefits from that contribution. The meeting produces better results. Those results affect everyone touched by the project. One broadcast, rippling outward. Now multiply this by every interaction of every day, every room you enter, every conversation you have, every person who receives your signal and is affected by it. This is your influence. This is your contribution. Not just what you do, but what you broadcast while doing it. And here's what makes this even more significant. Your attitude, sustained over time, becomes your character. Your character determines the quality of every relationship you have and every contribution you make. What you project consistently is what you become. And what you become shapes everyone and everything around you. The error that keeps many people from embracing this truth is thinking that attitude work is self-focused and therefore selfish. This inverts reality completely. Neglecting your broadcast isn't humble, it's irresponsible. Every room you enter, every person you interact with, receives your signal whether you attend to it or not. The question is not whether to broadcast, but what to broadcast. Refusing to cultivate your broadcast isn't self-effacement. It's neglect of your effect on others. It's walking through life spreading whatever signal happens to arise without regard for what others must receive. The person who says, "I don't have time for this attitude stuff, I'm too busy serving others," has missed the point entirely. Your attitude is your service. What you project is what you give. The broadcast is the contribution. When you cultivate a broadcast of capability, appreciation, and possibility, you become a light in every room you enter. You serve everyone you encounter, not through extra effort, but through who you are. This is the service of being. And when you truly understand this, that your broadcast serves or burdens everyone around you, that your attitude is itself your contribution, the whole endeavor shifts. It's no longer self-improvement. It's no longer about getting what you want. It's about becoming someone whose presence creates value wherever they go. Which brings us to the deepest question of all. If you are truly the broadcaster of your experience, if what you project shapes not only what returns to you but what others receive, then what does it mean to take full ownership of this power? What does it mean to become consciously and deliberately the architect of your own circumstance? Let me tell you something that will fundamentally change how you see yourself in relation to your own life. If attitude creates circumstance, if the signal you project shapes the reality you experience and affects everyone around you, then you are not a recipient of life. You are its architect. This is not metaphor, this is not motivation, this is the direct, logical implication of everything we've established. You are broadcasting a world into existence around you, every day, every interaction, every moment. The quality of that world, the opportunities it contains, the relationships it supports, the satisfactions it permits, is determined by the quality of your broadcast. This is power, real power, not power over others, but power over the fundamental conditions of your own existence. Consider the builder who doesn't realize he's building. Every day he lays bricks, mixes mortar, raises walls, but he thinks he's just surviving the day. He doesn't see that each action is construction, that each choice is architecture. Years later, he looks around and wonders how he ended up in this building. The walls feel like prison. The rooms feel too small. The structure doesn't serve him. But he built it, brick by brick, thought by thought, broadcast by broadcast. The building is his. It was always his. He was the architect all along. This is how most people live. They build their circumstances through thousands of daily broadcasts, then look around and wonder how they got here. They feel trapped by walls they constructed. They feel confined by rooms they designed. They feel victimized by a structure they created. Look at your life as it currently stands. Your circumstances, your relationships, your achievements and frustrations. Consider the possibility that you built this not through bad luck or good fortune, not through others' actions or external forces, not through circumstances beyond your control, but through thousands of days of broadcasting, each one laying another brick in the structure you now inhabit. If this is true, and if you followed the evidence, you know it is, then here's what it means. If you built it, you can build differently. You can architect differently, starting now. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years ago. They taught that the only true freedom lies in controlling what can be controlled. Our judgments, our attitudes, our responses, everything external is beyond our direct control. But the broadcast is entirely ours. Viktor Frankl, surviving the Nazi concentration camps, perhaps the most extreme circumstances any human has endured, discovered the same truth. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." In the camps, where external circumstances could not have been worse, Frankl found that the capacity to choose one's attitude remained, and those who exercised that capacity survived in ways that those who surrendered it did not. If attitude can be chosen in a concentration camp, it can be chosen in your circumstances. Every philosophy that produces human flourishing recognizes this. Inner causation is the key to outer creation. What you project creates what you experience. Who you become determines what you receive. Now here's something important, a warning about how not to use this understanding. The error would be to use it for blame rather than power. The point is not to say, I created my problems, therefore I am bad. That's self-flagellation. That's using truth as a weapon against yourself. The point is to say, I have been creating my experience, therefore I can create differently. That's liberation. That's using truth as a tool for transformation. The architect doesn't despair over what he's built. He recognizes that he can build again. The same power that created the unwanted structure can create something better. The same capacity that produced the current circumstance can produce a different one. This is why we don't dwell on what went wrong. We recognize the power that was operating unconsciously, and we apply it consciously going forward. Now let me address something that emerges from this understanding, a paradox that has puzzled many people. Why do so many who achieve external success feel empty? They've gathered the harvest. They have the wealth, the recognition, the achievements, but something is missing. The success doesn't satisfy. The accomplishments feel hollow. They've arrived at a destination and found it wasn't where they wanted to be. Here's why. They've gathered the harvest, but never transformed the planting. They're still broadcasting anxiety, still projecting scarcity, still transmitting fear, even surrounded by wealth. The environment mirrors perfectly, and even their success feels like failure. They build a successful-looking building with an unconscious architect. The structure impresses others but doesn't serve them. And here's the opposite paradox. Why do some who have achieved little by external measures radiate contentment? They've mastered the broadcast. They project gratitude, capability, service. The environment mirrors perfectly, and even modest circumstances feel like abundance. They've built a humble structure with a conscious architect, and the structure serves them perfectly. The goal is not to use attitude to get things. The goal is transformation itself. What you become is determined by what you project. Your attitude, sustained over time, becomes your character. Your character becomes your life. The results that follow are pleasant confirmations, but not the real point. The real point is what you become. The architect who builds consciously, who chooses his broadcast deliberately, who projects with intention, becomes something in the building. Not just someone who has things, but someone who is something. The building is secondary. The builder is primary. This is the deepest transformation available, from seeing yourself as a recipient of circumstance to recognizing yourself as its architect, from passive reactor to active creator, from victim to builder. You have been building all along. The only question now is, will you continue building unconsciously, or will you take up the tools deliberately? The mirror awaits your decision. Let's return to where we began. Chicago. Dawn. The light breaking over Lake Michigan and spilling across the skyline. Two people stand at the same window. The same light. The same lake. The same city emerging from darkness into day. Now we understand what we couldn't understand before. The sunrise is neutral. It's just photons hitting the retina. What it means, promise or burden, possibility or exhaustion, is entirely determined by the broadcast of the one who watches it. One person projects promise, and the day returns promise. The other projects burden, and the day returns burden. Neither is lying. Neither is engaging in fantasy. Both are experiencing the exact world their broadcast has created. The mirror is faithful. It has always been faithful. It will always be faithful. Every lasting wisdom tradition converges on this single point. The Bible, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. The Buddha, what you think, you become. Marcus Aurelius, your life is what your thoughts make it. William James, the greatest revolution of our generation is the discovery that human beings, by changing the inner attitudes of their minds, can change the outer aspects of their lives. The agreement is complete. The truth is universal. Your environment will always reflect you accurately. This is not reward or punishment. This is not cosmic justice or mystical law. This is simply how the system works. The mirror can do nothing else but return what it receives. If you broadcast suspicion, You will encounter people who give you reasons to be suspicious. If you broadcast trust, you will encounter people who rise to meet it. If you project expectation of problems, problems will arrange themselves before you. If you project expectation of solutions, solutions will appear. It's that simple, and it's that profound. Here's the practical power of this understanding. If you don't like what you're receiving, you have the power to change what you're sending. Not tomorrow, today. Not eventually, now. Not after circumstances improve, before. You cannot wait for the mirror to change before you change your broadcast. The mirror can only reflect. It has no initiative. It has no capacity to go first. The change must come from you, and then, only then, will the reflection follow. Change what goes out, and what comes back changes. Project capability, and capability is reflected. Project appreciation and reasons for appreciation appear. Project expectation of solutions, and solutions become visible. Project trust, and trust is returned. The work is simple. The mechanism is straightforward. You are the transmitter. You control the signal. The environment is the mirror, and the mirror is faithful. But I must be direct about something. The work is simple, but it is not easy. It requires constant attention. It requires catching yourself when you slip into reactive broadcasting, when circumstances trigger the old patterns and you find yourself projecting the old signals before you realize what you're doing. It requires choosing, again and again, to project what you've decided to project rather than what circumstances seem to warrant. The meeting becomes difficult. Will you broadcast defensiveness or capability? The colleague disappoints. Will you broadcast judgment or understanding? The obstacle appears. Will you broadcast defeat or determination? Every moment is a choice. Every interaction is an opportunity to broadcast deliberately or to default to reaction. And the old patterns are strong. They've been running for years. They'll reassert themselves constantly. You'll slip. You'll forget. You'll find yourself halfway through the day having broadcast the old signal without ever consciously choosing. This is normal. This is not failure. The question is not whether you'll slip. You will. The question is how quickly you'll notice and how consistently you'll return. Every time you catch the old broadcast and choose the new one, you strengthen the new pattern. Every time you notice reactivity and reassert deliberation, you become more capable of deliberation. The catching and returning is itself the practice. The noticing and choosing is itself the transformation. And over time, through persistence, through patient returning, the new broadcast becomes more natural than the old. The deliberate signal becomes the default. The conscious architecture becomes habitual. When that happens, you've transformed not just what you do, but who you are. Now, let me leave you with this. Today, right now, you have the opportunity to change your broadcast. You have nothing to lose. If it doesn't work, you can return to your old signal tomorrow. You've lost nothing but a day of experiment. You've risked nothing but a brief test. But if it does work, if you discover, as millions have discovered, that the mirror responds faithfully to whatever you project, you will have gained something of incalculable value. You will have gained control of your own experience. You will have discovered that you are not the victim of circumstance, but its architect. You will have found the key that unlocks everything else. The sunrise over Chicago is just photons hitting your retina. What it means, promise or burden, beginning or exhaustion, is entirely up to you. Every circumstance in your life is equally neutral, equally waiting to become whatever your broadcast makes it. You are the transmitter. You control the signal. The environment is the mirror, and the mirror is faithful. This is not easy work, but it is simple work, and it is the most important work you will ever do. Start today. You have nothing to lose, but you have your whole life to win. This is the magic word. This is attitude, and it changes everything.